This chapter is brought to you by The Brotherhood of the Dragon, an Armand Galeas and Sebastian Volk mystery, Book 1 in the Bloodline trilogy. The Brotherhood of the Dragon is available at Odyssey Books and on Amazon. Now before I begin, I'll admit I am reading 2 chapters here, as I try to keep this book fast-paced and punchy, so the chapters are short and rather tight. Chapter 4. My head hurt. Actually, my head had already been hurting before my run-in with the flat end of the shovel. It had been hurting ever since I woke up in bed in what was now starting to feel like days ago. What I meant to say was my head was no longer simply sore. It was now a source of complete and utter misery. It felt as though the shovel had split my skull in two, and it was still sitting there, like some handyman's Excalibur, waiting to be drawn out by the true King of England. Before my vision swam the face of my attacker. For some strange reason, he looked concerned. "Are you kidding around, Amon? Did I hit you too hard?" Though a reply formed, it somehow got lost on the way out. "Blarg, Mina, was. Come on, I did not hit you that hard. Frizzberger, Billwart." Maybe I did hit you too hard. Though most of my motor functions seemed to have deserted me, the sharp pain in my head kept my mind focused enough to keep an eye on what my attacker was up to. He first got up and looked about, perhaps to make sure his ambush had remained unseen, and there was no one rushing to my rescue. Next, he returned to my side and removed a small tobacco tin from his top pocket. This he opened, and from within removed a butterfly, very similar to the one I had seen earlier during my walk with Robin Stamford. The gardener took the insect and, forcing my mouth open with his left hand, placed it on my tongue. He then clamped one incredibly powerful fist over my mouth and nose, and almost politely said, "Swallow." As hard as I tried to squirm from under his grip, the man effortlessly held me in place. "Swallow," he said again, with more force. Already I could feel the fragile creature's body dissolving in my mouth as my body tried to dislodge the irritant by drowning it in saliva. I could feel the harder parts rubbing against the roof of my mouth, and then starting to migrate down my throat as the butterfly disintegrated. "Swallow it," the man said again, sensing my attempt to resist disappearing along with what air was in my lungs. "For God's sake, Amon, just swallow the damn thing." Finally, my chest heaved and spasmed as blissful unconsciousness approached. Just before I blacked out, I felt my throat automatically swallow, and once my attacker was sure I had not somehow faked everything, he released me. With a gasp, fresh cool air flooded my lungs, and my amnesia melted away like a butterfly on your tongue. Chapter 5. Though I rarely intervene in the activities of men, somehow enough people know about my past to ensure I still receive visitors in distress, hoping I have some knowledge or advice that could help them survive their time of need. Most are just lazy people with lazy issues, and those I happily send away. Occasionally something or someone appears with a tale to tell that catches my attention. In these instances, I am happy to help. The world can be a dull place at times, so a new challenge or even just something to pass the time is a jewel to be treasured. If you are of the opinion that the butterfly was some magic potion that gave me back my memory, you are correct. I hate insects. I hate every kind of insect, but very specifically, I hate butterflies. Certainly they look pretty, and that is their evil genius. Underneath the gaudy colours and great luminous wings lies a filthy creature of coarse hair and black, spider-like bodies. Have you ever looked closely at a butterfly's head? I mean really closely. Those enormous alien eyes. The giant proboscis that makes them look more like the Drinker of Souls in some 13th century religious manuscript about the tortures of hell rather than something little girls like to draw on their bedroom walls. Butterflies are the painted strumpets of the animal kingdom, and I do not trust them, not one little bit. The horror and disgust of having the incarnation of evil in my mouth helped destroy the intellectual block I had placed in my mind days ago. After so many years, I had become a creature of habit and lazy days. I have always tried to avoid work, confrontation, or stimulation where I could, but to remain living in the style I've grown accustomed to, well, that requires money. This of course means that when I do work, I do so to get paid so I can go right back to my comfortable chair and my books. Like any skill, knowledge requires upkeep, and I need time to remain the genius I believe myself to be. The fellow who stood over me was Sebastian Volk, and we had known each other for a long time. Certainly, he did not like everything I did, and I was none too happy about his success with the ladies, a problem, and his inability to gamble, not so much a problem, but an ongoing tragedy that threatened to doom us both. Not only did Volk bring his own unique gifts to our acquaintance, he was also of such a great age that he too was often up for an adventure to alleviate the boredom that came with being immortal and idle. His association with me ensured he got plenty of that. He was what you would perhaps call a friend. I wouldn't though, as I had little time for the man, but you may well consider us as such. "Feeling better?" Volk asked, hauling me to my feet with little effort, then patting my backside down as though I was a clumsy child. "I know this is a little earlier than you asked, but things seem to be progressing too fast for you to be lying about in bed." Taking my first unassisted steps, Volk guided me down one of the rear paths to a section of the garden that seemed unused. As we walked, he filled me in. "I joined the ground staff like you suggested, and what a miserable lot they have turned out to be. Most of them are discharged soldiers who served with the general, though recently several older men have retired and been replaced by men who had served with the colonel. Most are as mean as the day is long, and none of them know the first thing about gardening, which is probably the only reason I got the job." As we neared an enormous brick wall that I assumed ran the perimeter of the estate, the old dog pointed out a large pile of rubbish and what looked like a discarded barn door. "What I want to show you is under there, and as far as I can tell, no one I have encountered has had anything to do with it." Unsure what it was, I approached the slab of wood carefully and tilted the door up by one corner. Underneath was a shallow pit, and about 2 feet down was the body of a man. Well, I assumed it was a man, and circumstances would later prove me correct. These chapters were brought to you by The Brotherhood of the Dragon, available at Odyssey Books and on Amazon. The music is by Ben Sound, and you can see more at his website www.bensound.com.